The Shinkansen is not just a train, it is a symbol. When it launched in October 1964, the same week as the Tokyo Olympics, it represented Japan's post-war comeback. The country that had been reduced to rubble 19 years earlier had built the fastest train on Earth. And in the 60 years since, Japan's bullet trains have carried billions of passengers without a single fatality caused by a collision or derailment. Zero. The Shinkansen is held up as proof of what Japanese engineering and discipline can achieve. So here is what happened on a Saturday night in June 2018. The Nozomi 265 bound from Tokyo toward Osaka, carrying more than 800 people. A young man in car 12 reaches into his bag and pulls out a machete. He is not confused. He is not panicking. He has been planning this for a while. And the goal, when you finally understand what it was, is the part that changes the way you look at everything else. It was June 9th, 2018, a Saturday night, a little before 10 o'clock. The Nozomi 265 was traveling southwestward on the Tokaido Shinkansen line in the stretch between Yokohama and Odawara stations in Kanagawa Prefecture. There was somewhere in the region of 800 to 880 passengers aboard. One of them was Ichiro Kojima, 22 years old and unemployed, a resident of Okazaki City in Aichi Prefecture. He was sitting in car 12. At around 9:45 in the evening, Kojima stood up and attacked two women seated nearby. The women were in their 20s. He used a nata, a broad, heavy-bladed Japanese tool that resembles a cleaver or machete, along with a smaller fruit knife. Both women sustained serious injuries to their heads, necks, and shoulders. Then another passenger intervened. His name was Kotaro Umeda. He was 38 years old, a businessman from Amagasaki in Hyogo Prefecture, on his way home after a business trip to Yokohama. He stepped in front of the attacker. Based on the testimony of one of the surviving women, Umeda putting himself between them and Kojima gave the women time to get away. Both women survived. Umeda did not. He was stabbed multiple times in the neck and the thigh. According to news reports, and I want to note this figure comes from journalistic accounts rather than a verified forensic record, he sustained approximately 78 wounds. He died at the scene. The train continued on to Odawara Station, where police were already waiting. Kojima was subdued when the train stopped. He did not attempt to flee. He was taken into custody by Kanagawa Prefectural Police. One person was dead, two others were seriously injured, and the man responsible had not tried to escape. The attack was not impulsive. Kojima had brought both weapons onto the train deliberately, carrying the nata and the fruit knife in his bag when he boarded. There is no indication that he knew any of the passengers in car 12, or that he chose his targets for any specific reason beyond proximity. They were simply the people nearest to him. The Shinkansen, like all Japanese bullet train services, had no baggage screening at the point of boarding. There are no metal detectors at the platforms, no X-ray machines, nothing like airport-style security. A passenger boards with whatever they can carry. The system is built for speed and efficiency, and formal checks would destroy both. That gap was not a secret. 3 years earlier, in June 2015, a 71-year-old man named Haruo Hayashizaki had poured oil on himself and set himself on fire aboard a Nozomi service in almost the same stretch of track between Yokohama and Odawara, killing himself and a 52-year-old woman nearby who died from burns and smoke inhalation. The 2015 incident prompted internal reviews at JR Tokai, the company that operates the Tokaido Shinkansen. Emergency procedures were examined. What was not introduced? Any form of passenger baggage screening. Kojima boarded the Nozomi 265 in the evening, found his seat in car 12, and waited. When he stood up and began attacking the two women, surrounding passengers fled to the ends of the carriage. Train crew were alerted. Police were notified, but the train was locked in motion at 270 kilometers per hour, and by the time it pulled into Odawara, Kotaro Umeda was already dying. Kojima told police his reason directly and consistently. He had attacked people on the Shinkansen because he wanted to spend his life in prison. He explained it this way: living independently was exhausting. making his own decisions, managing his own circumstances, figuring out how to exist in a society where he had no job, no clear path, and, by his own account, no capacity to build one. All of this felt pointless and overwhelming. Prison, he said, offered the opposite. Rules set by others, structure provided for you, food and shelter without having to arrange them yourself. I aimed for life imprisonment, he told police. Living and thinking for myself was a hassle. He also told investigators that if he were ever released, he would absolutely kill again. Not as a threat, more as a statement of fact about his own planning. This motive, using violent crime as a strategy to enter and remain in prison, is not entirely without precedent in Japan, but it is rare to encounter it stated so directly. Researchers studying Japan's social withdrawal problem have documented a small but real pattern of people, often men, often deeply isolated, for whom the possibility of incarceration has shifted from deterrent to goal. The conventional logic of criminal justice assumes that prison is something people want to avoid. The whole deterrence model rests on that. For Kojima, it was the destination. Why Kojima specifically arrived at this conclusion is harder to establish. His background, as it emerged through prosecution and press reporting, includes several factors, but much of what has been reported comes from journalistic accounts and court documents, so these details carry varying degrees of reliability. With that caveat, it's said that Kojima had a developmental condition. He was reportedly diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome during a 4-month psychiatric evaluation conducted after his arrest. This evaluation was ordered before the trial could proceed. He grew up in what has been described as an unstable family environment. He reportedly said frequently during his adolescence that he wanted to die. There is an account, alleged, not confirmed from official records, that at some point before the Shinkansen attack he had stabbed his own father, and that rather than being sent to juvenile detention following that incident, he was placed in a shelter run by a homeless support group where his mother was working at the time. By the evening of June 9, 2018, he was 22 years old, unemployed, living without structure or plan. The psychiatric evaluation after his arrest found that Kojima had a serious personality disorder alongside the possible developmental condition. Prosecutors, taking this diagnosis into account, ultimately did not seek the death penalty. Under Japanese law, the lay judge system, the saibanin system, where ordinary citizens serve alongside professional judges, was used for the trial. Proceedings began in late November 2019. What makes this case psychologically distinct from most violent crimes is how deliberate the decision-making appears to have been. There is no evidence of a rage episode, a sudden break, a momentary loss of control. There is a cold calculation. I cannot live this way. Prison would be better. What threshold do I need to cross to get there? He crossed it. That logic does not require us to conclude that Kojima was psychologically healthy. The psychiatric findings suggest he wasn't. But the logic itself, the weighing of options, the selection of a target outcome, the execution of a plan, worked the way logic is supposed to work, just toward a goal that most people would never consider. The judge at his trial described him as self-centered and selfish. This is accurate. It is also a moral frame that doesn't quite reach the core problem, which is not that Kojima was selfish, but that the ordinary threats and promises of social life had completely ceased to function for him. He had no career to protect, no relationships to preserve, no reputation he cared about. The usual levers did not apply. At the sentencing hearing, when the court announced the verdict, life imprisonment, Kojima stood from his seat despite being ordered to remain seated. He raised his fist and reportedly called out, "Banzai," a traditional Japanese expression of triumph. He would not be appealing, he said. The sentence was what he wanted. The sentence became final in January 2020, when neither Kojima nor his lawyers filed an appeal within the statutory period. Ichiro Kojima is now serving a life sentence in a Japanese penitentiary. It's been reported, by a Japanese legal news outlet, that he subsequently sent a letter from prison in which he described himself as very happy now. Whether that is true, what it means, and what to do with it morally, I genuinely do not know. The discomfort it produces is part of the case's strange, persistent weight. Kotaro Umeda left behind a family. His death was publicly acknowledged. The governor of Hyogo Prefecture praised his courage. People called him a hero because he was one. He was 38 years old and on his way home from a work trip. He looked at two strangers being attacked and stepped between them and the person doing it. He had no training and no time to think. He gave those women enough time to get away, and he did not survive. The Shinkansen debate continued for years. Uniformed security guards were added to services on major lines. Emergency first aid kits were reviewed and updated. Proposals for formal baggage screening, the airport model, checks before boarding, came up repeatedly and were shelved repeatedly. The argument against is practical and has never changed. The Shinkansen's whole value lies in being able to board quickly, at scale, without queuing. Introduce airport-style checks and you rebuild the train from scratch as a service. As of recent years, formal passenger baggage screening does not exist on the Shinkansen network. This case raises questions that don't resolve cleanly, about what happens to people who fall entirely outside the reach of society's ordinary support systems, about whether a criminal justice framework designed around deterrence has any purchase on someone for whom prison is a goal rather than a threat, about what it costs, specifically in Kotaro Umeda's case, what it costs exactly, when those questions go unanswered long enough. Thank you for watching. If this reached you somehow, if it stayed with you, please subscribe and come back. These stories deserve witnesses, for the victims especially, and for what they show us.